right, Cosmos, I want to start with you. You're on the agency side of the table. You are the advisor, sometimes the quote-unquote subject matter expert. You get to dance around in different sectors, industries, have leaders of mature companies, startups, scale-ups. So I think for me, this question, to what degree can you tell us about what I'd call the best leaders in crisis? We saw what this audience expects of leaders if they had a magic wand, but what can you tell me, without necessarily mentioning maybe the sector or the person individually, but the times when you've seen firsthand, are these guys dreaming, or is there a real world where some of this exists?
Oh, thank you very much, Mark. So from my experience, leaders who do well in crisis situations have certain traits. So I wouldn't go into names or brands. And so number one is they listen. So handling a crisis is not a one-man show. So you need to have a team around you, and you listen to them, and it's a team sport. Then number two is being decisive, because many times a crisis would happen and people don't want to jump because you're busy managing egos and stakeholders. So the boss doesn't want to say, let's go, because the boss would need to say that. So for a good leader, you'd need to know when to say, let's go, or let's hold, or let's be decisive. Then the other thing is matching what you're saying with body language. Like, say, for instance, if it's there's been protests, for instance, and you're talking about it, you're giving a statement to the media, but your body language is off from what you're saying, so it sort of works against the point that you're trying to make. And the final point I'd make is being factual. You know, there are people who like cameras. There's some politician who said that there's something that happens when cameras come in front of them and they lose control. So if you have a leader who can control themselves in front of cameras, that's a trait that would help. When we think about your past experience, say, in the media, and generally timeless principles that can carry over, what would you say are the necessary skills any person here in the audience could use when it comes to being able to tackle a crisis? So more from a place of principles and things you think that can carry even across different sectors.
So when it comes to crisis and what my background has taught me, it's gotten me in trouble, but it's also given me thick skin. So back to your question, there was something like, how do you look at a crisis? I'm the one who said, we go going. Like, to do, see, we go going. It's happened. What do I need to do? What I need to do is apply the principles that I have. And those I have learned over time. So my background as a journalist, it gives you a thick skin. You have had the most morbid conversations when you've covered death or a crisis of post-election or a plane crash or a terrorist attack. It shapes how you think differently. You take those principles you have learned or what you have seen being a journalist, and when I went to agency, you apply them. It comes in handy. It comes in handy also when you're talking to your client, when you're talking to your leader, and sometimes they feed out of the energy that you have. So if you're the one advising and you're panicking, they'll be like, hey, I'm not sure. So then are you the right person to be advising or to be seated in that position? So yes, if you're panicking, by the way, you swallow, collect yourself, stand there and advise or have a conversation. And you can say, I do not think this is the right way because of A, B, C, D. But then also experience helps you to understand. And then you must also know the personalities you're working with. That also applies now when you take it to corporate. And imagine it's the same when you take it to public sector or when you're working for a politician. You might agree, you might not agree, but you must be able to express yourself, and they must be able to trust the knowledge that you're coming with. So that's how I feel it's a transferable skill, and you should be able to apply yourself. So that's why I call myself a communication profession vis-a-vis public sector or a civil servant, because tomorrow I might not be in government. Tomorrow I might be in development world. What I have learned today in Nairobi County will apply there. Yeah.
Thank you. So Andrew, I want to turn to you. You had a really good comment after George's presentation when you were talking about the values. And what I'm curious is your view on leaders who might fall short or miss the mark, or even just responses from institutions. You talked about how a social movement can start to wane over time because the values are changing. And I thought that was helpful. What can you tell us maybe about the point leader, the person who's supposed to set the tone for everybody else? You might be the advisor going to them, trying to guide them. And in both of these cases, I think both Cosmas and Koi have shared perspectives on that. But what can you tell us now, either from a development or movement building lens, on leaders who fall short? And it could even be a more junior person who's expected to lead. You're the digital expert. You tell us what to do, right? So what are those things that maybe people might miss or get wrong?
What tends to happen in missing the mark is when you think it's all about you. So a crisis is happening. You're the CEO of the organization. You think everybody's looking at you and looking for answers from you, and you structure your entire team around yourself. So even like you said, there's a person who's the expert in digital. You push them to the corner all the way in the back, and you say that person's job is to just feed me information and it's all about me. You need to be able to decentralize and look at the entirety of your team and say everyone in this room at this juncture has value. Everyone has certain expertise. We need to collate all of this and then put it out to the public in a meaningful way, and also anticipate some of those questions. And those questions can be raised within the room. A lot of the times, it's been said over and over in this room again, I think of it as the call is coming from inside the house. Those leaked documents are coming from that room. They're not coming from like some junior staff or something. It's the person who's in that room. But if the person in that room feels like they're included, they're involved, when they said that crisis, I've been saying for months that crisis is coming, you say, okay, I'm sorry. This is a closed meeting. We acknowledge that you are in fact right about this, but we are here now. What's your advice? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's make sure the PR person or the comms person has noted down, and we are preparing now the framework together. That's when I would say you're hitting the mark. Missing the mark is now when you start thinking, no, I, as the CEO, I have 40 years experience in the finance sector. You will not tell me what to tell people. And then you go out and say things, people react a certain way because it was digital. Your 40 years experience talking to people in newspapers. Or like you had a lot of control when it was just newspapers, but now there's this thing called Twitter/X/whatever it will be next year. Like that space is very different, and that young 25-year-old could have warned you way in advance that that's good. The statement is fine for the newspapers, but for these guys, you need to unbutton your shirt, roll up your sleeves, sit like this, stand like this, be at this space, talk to these people, show that you care. They could have advised you in that way.
I think Cosmos will be coming back to you. I think in the agency world, one of the challenges is that there's, you can provide advice, but there's always this question around what they call the risk department. Their job is shut it down, keep it quiet, keep it simple. Or you have the legal department who say we can't say this word here, or we can't say anything about this at all. So you've got a great plan, you feel like you've made a lot of headway, but there's sometimes for brands or organizations a risk of litigation. So you want to be transparent, you want to be authentic, but you're like, yeah, I'm regulated by that government body, or I am a publicly traded company. So maybe tell us about your experience making that balance with risk, with litigation, while trying to be authentic or trying to provide advice to your client that they should take.
Point is, you'd give advice from a comms perspective, and then the lawyers would want to look at it from like saying we can't say this like this, we'd have to say it in a vague way, so it ends up not doing anything, and it undoes what you're trying to do. And so there's that's number one. The other people, apart from risk that you mentioned, is also finance, because a big part of crisis is preparation, making sure you're ready. You have a plan, you've mapped scenarios, you've written holding statements, you've done simulations. But remember, that's a cost. And many times business would say, why should we invest in that? Why don't we just concentrate on ops? Because we never know if it's going to happen. And it's true, you can prepare like that and spend 40 years without crisis. Then the day you don't update it in the next 30 days, that's when it hits you and then you're in trouble. So number one is trying to socialize our organizations so that people can see what's happening. And for us as comms people, one of the ways that we can do this is by showing how other people are suffering. So for instance, there's an organization from wherever, so you send to your clients, in my case, so if you're in-house specialist, tell people, this is something we can learn from, we need to ramp up our preparedness for crisis, we need to invest in these things. That's number one. Number two, and part of that is telling people to see the need that we need to have a crisis management team. And when you have a crisis management team, it means you'd have someone from finance to handle the money issues. Of course, a legal guy would be there, and people from risk and everyone else. But the advantage of having the team is you're able to do this collaboratively, as opposed to you as a comms person going to write down that thing and write down a holding statement, and then it goes to legal and it comes back with reading like something you didn't write and doesn't do what you're trying to use it to do. So how do we make sure that our crisis management teams are constituted and they're constituted properly so that they take cognizance of the risk that comes with crisis and what that can cause to the business? It can shut down and people go home. It can spoil relationships with government. It can get reputation damage, like that time people are being cancelled on X around the protest. So socialization, I think, is a big part of this, and then leaning on the team again.
There are times when, in the middle of a crisis, an organization or a leader needs to say nothing at all, even though it's hit somewhere emotionally. How do you counsel for that? Or how do you find a middle ground where they get to vent or let go a bit, but it doesn't reach the public? You try to let it blow over.
Sometimes in a crisis, there's value in silence. You don't always have to speak. You don't always have to have an opinion. It might be personal. It might be touching you somewhere. Imagine, get your friends and go drink. That's it. And sometimes we've seen the value of silence, and sometimes there is, if you're going to talk, also what you need to say and what you say. So let me give an example of looking at the situation and how it impacts or what you need to do. During the protests, my boss opted for silence. And that had a lot to do with what he was saying earlier, and also George and the development space. It was about the finance bill, and it was a national issue. It was not about the county finance bill. When now it turned to be something else, we still remained silent, because what are we weighing in? Devolution is very clear, the role each one plays. So sometimes silence is golden. And later when he was asked, he said, there's also value in listening. Just don't speak. Why are you speaking? What are you saying? If what you're saying, is it adding value, or is it igniting the situation? There's also, let me give an example. Well, I've spent a lot of time looking at case studies because of the office. I came from private sector, so entering public and government was a whole new arena. And I like reading. And one case study that really I've looked at and I continuously look at is, I don't know what the average age here is if you remember the Clinton and Monica Lewinsky case. It was a political crisis. It was a national crisis and it was a personal crisis. And I love the memes where they say there's a generation that does not understand there are two people in this photo, or who will never know who Monica is. But the story, that is a very good story of what happened. I'm sure where he was, personally, because it was a personal attack and it was his career on the line. And it was the United States looking bad. The whole world was like, you guys preaching to the world, and this is your values and your Christianity. Now see your president, see your leadership and how it's showing up. But if you look at that case study, and I'm sure he had lawyers, and impeachment was pending, he came with his wife and apologized and said, I am only human. All of us were like, and yeah, I know a guy even who was caught in a certain situation. My uncle, there's a leader of ours who talked about his only one wife showing us more than one finger. It's by humanizing himself away from the presidency, he brought down that crisis. And that must have taken a lot of listening to his team, his legal team, and just, humbling yourself. There's no need of saying, I am the president, I will not humble myself. I am the leader, I will not humble yourself. You humble yourself. You humanize that situation. So yes, there is value in silence, but there is also what you deliver and how you deliver it. Because sometimes in silence, there's also admission of guilt. So you have to weigh the situation. Again, also in silence, if you don't speak, you might let somebody else run away with the situation. Let me go back to the Clinton situation where in his silence, you allowed your detractors run away. Look at him. How can this man lead our country? If he can't lead his home, why? So yes, it depends on the situation. But yes, for crisis, it's very, very personal, especially in the political arena. In corporate, yes, to an extent, when they come at you personally. Let me give an example of when we say bundles are being eaten, literally, and we name a person who's eating the bundles. It's personal. I'm sure you sit there, you're like, sasa mi nakula bundles and like, what is this? Or people come at your family or those kind of things. But sometimes engaging does not really add value to the brand, to yourself, and to the situation.
There are a few times when you might need to consider keeping quiet. One, for instance, you get attacked. You're a brand, you get attacked, and everyone is out. You have all this brand love, so people are coming out to defend you. Sometimes you don't even need to get into the conversation because it's we go going, like you're saying. Then sometimes it's an industry issue. People are talking about privacy. People are talking about issues to do with tracking and all those things, and they're talking generally about the industry. And then you, as a player in the industry, decide to go fast and say, we are not like this or we are like this. The unfortunate thing is you end up beginning to own the crisis. So you'd be the reference point. When people are doing stories, follow-up stories, they'll keep quoting you, and everyone else in the industry will be very happy to shut up. And the last scenario where I think silence would make sense is in cases where you're being attacked. Obviously, for many brands, you're always tracking your mentions, you're tracking you have listening posts on social media. Then every time you get a mention, you want to react, you want to, let's go into crisis response mode. Sometimes it's just me and my 50 followers. You don't need to worry about that. It should be an issue, but it should not, you don't need to talk at that point. And sometimes you don't even have, something is still evolving, you don't have the full information. So you probably might want to wait, which is risky as well because people can run away with the story and then you end up trying to catch up. But strategically, there could be value in making sure you have something substantial so that when you come, you'll say, this has happened and this is our position. And if it's admitting, that's if you manage to convince the lawyers for you to admit liability if there's a liability to be admitted, this is how we're going to remedy.
And I believe it's probably already been discussed today, but certain organizations want to associate with a certain issue. So overseas, for example, they have greenwashing, which is just, you now all of a sudden, climate is the hot topic. You wanna just sort of like go with the flow of that. Or there's pink washing, where organizations try to associate themselves with the LGBTQIA plus movement, and so they have Pride Month, they have all these activities, and yet their businesses or organizations aren't really supporting the movement. And that's why I think it's it's normally looked at negatively. So if you're guiding the audience and speaking from experience, what are the risks and rewards? We've just come from talking about silence, but are there times when, because if silence is the answer, it's because the risk of speaking and it going wrong outweighs being silent. But what do you say there are in terms of risks and rewards of associating or taking a public stance with a social movement, and determining the right time to act?
So with regards to risks and rewards, first of all, I'm gonna go back to McDonald's and the only color is golden. So there's always at any given moment an issue going on. There are so many, there are bigger ones, well, maybe not bigger ones, there are louder ones because they have the highest pain points all around the world, mostly to do with oppression and human rights issues. Those are going to be the louder ones, but everyone at every given point has an issue that's dear to them that they're working on, and they would love to see their favorite toothpaste brand, just Aquafresh, but jump in and tell us that you're standing up for our rights, and us guys are suffering. But if Aquafresh just comes out and says, okay, look, whatever stance you have, the only thing us guys do is, the only thing that matters to us is white healthy teeth. So whether it's this guy speaking sideways but he has white healthy teeth, or it's you standing up on business but you have white healthy teeth, that's what us guys do. So what I'm getting to is, what exactly is it that you do as a brand, as an organization, as a public office? What exactly is your... I love how you broke it down in terms of there's a responsibility there, there's a responsibility here, and the law is very clear. What exactly is it that you do? That's the only place you can start with, your brand alignment. Your second place to work from is your values alignment. So every organization, this is why everyone jumps in on pinkwashing, greenwashing, etc. Every organization says, we believe in 1, 2, 3. Whether or not they actually do them, that's a discussion for a later point. But I promise you, if you walk into their headquarters or any office, you'll see on the walls, our values. We believe in a spirit of human rights and fairness and equality for all. I love the one that's on every single job description now when you're applying for things, like, we're an equal opportunity employer. But when you walk in there and you look at, just generally qualitatively look at the folks who work there, this is not an equal opportunity employer. There's those areas. So essentially start with, the second point to start from is, what is your value alignment, and does it align with whatever is actually good? Does it actually align? Because if it doesn't, default to point number 1. Just stick to what your brand does, and everyone will find it. Truth be told, everyone will find it to be fair that you're a toothpaste brand. There's really nothing you're going to do about 1, 2, 3. But then the other thing I would say, when it comes to particularly these major issues, and particularly social movements, you're feeling like we need to do something as a brand, but we are concerned about our place and how it's going to affect our partners. There's one neutral place everyone can start from: be the voice of de-escalation. De-escalation does not mean telling one group to stop or the other one to ramp up or also stop. It's just to tell people, right now, guys, our temperatures are here, and a conversation needs to be had, but we need to bring whatever needs to be done to bring the temperature to here. Let's start there. And everyone's gonna shout and say, tell those guys. And it's like, no, we are a toothpaste brand. As you can see, I've chosen toothpaste as my reference. We are a toothpaste brand. We can't tell these ones X or these ones Y all we can say is, for the fairness of all these white pearly teeth, we need to bring this thing down first and then have a conversation, because that's a very neutral place to start, and people can't really hold you accountable, in quotes, for saying like we need to bring things down. And you'll see a lot of organizations, governments, they always start from that point of view. We recognize the fundamental rights of 1, 2, 3. We are calling for a de-escalation or a conversation to be had, just first and foremost, before you start denouncing. You start denouncing when people now go extra, but first let's bring guys down. What will tend to happen is, one, because you've aligned with your brand and your values, folks will see you as a neutral player, or at least say like, at the end of the day, it's Aquafresh. Like they won't put you on some kind of a watch list to blacklist you. Because you supported either or. You are just like, we're Aquafresh, man. Sorry to Aquafresh. I don't know. I was trying to be neutral, but just using Aquafresh as an example, people will say like, at the end of the day, they're a toothpaste brand. Like them, they just sold toothpaste. They didn't lean this way or that way. In fact, they asked people to just come to the table and talk, and they left it at that.
So I think for me, just a few points, and then I'll take Abby's question. So earlier this year, we got to do some interesting data work with the banking sector. And there's an interesting balance there, because years ago we had Imperial Bank, we had Chase Bank, so banks that even though things were not directly related to social media, now time has been able to tell. At that point, the idea was that social media was contributing towards crises or a lack of trust in the whole sector. So one bank is going through it, but other banks get affected. So there's a very interesting, just discussion on where do you want banks to compete? Genuinely compete for your attention, compete for your trust, and where do you want them to collectively be silent? Because if any one of them breaks rank, let's say at an issue, say to do with cybersecurity, if one of them starts saying, I'm the most, you never want to be that, because they all have issues. They just all have awfully quiet risk people, and legal people know to sort of be quiet about that specifically. So I think that's a place where at an industry level, there's still quite a lot of this back and forth on what's allowable. So let's compete on these issues in the public square. And then where do we find a delicate balance? So I think, because for some, your crisis is my opportunity, right? Your customers could be my customers. They'll still keep an account with you, but I just took advantage. I was the one who got to them first. And so there's these ways that they are learning or finding attention of, you've referred me, right? Your institution has an issue. Wangoi says that Mark is a great person. Andrew is the neutral person who has to decide, right? So Andrew's upset with Cosmos. Wangoi has a dog in the fight and said me. And then as an institution, I have to decide, am I going to be quiet, or am I going to come and say, yeah, I'm the best? Underneath the mentions where, Cosmos that time has, is putting out fires. So situations like that need short-term and long-term thinking. There's something I said in the LinkedIn Live said some weeks ago that I like to live by, which I think Cosmos said. That's my parting shot, is it's a very American saying, but proper preparation prevents poor performance. The number of things you can get better at just by being a little better prepared. You don't have to be amazingly prepared. You can't prepare for everything, but we sometimes overlook just the power of not just preparation, but proper preparation. This one on influence is interesting. I'm going to try not to name brands directly, but I think I'll give a few examples, and I'll leave you guys to put the dots together. So there are content creators who, during the protests, took a stand. And, people are coming out with receipts saying, but look how you've supported previous political aspirants and people, and now this is the side you're on. And the thing I find, at least just looking at like so much data from, TikTok and X and YouTube and across social networks, is that over time, because of something called the Wikipedia effect, which says that only 1% of people create, meaning the majority, and it's not an exact science, but it just says the vast majority of people are not creating. 1% create, 9% respond, like, comment, share, interact, then 90% are lurkers. So So for creators, as long as they don't stop creating, over time, it's not that you'll forget, but there's a section of people who will move on, at least the majority of people, because there'll be someone else to cancel, there'll be a bigger bullseye somewhere else. So that's been interesting to watch, because some were bullied because of being silent. And they're still creating now. And if you check their mentions, the last dozen videos, no one has the time to come back and tell them, I still want you to go back in June when I came and I was really upset you didn't say anything. And all your content had nothing to do with the finance bill. Why did you not take a stand? And they're still closing brand deals now. So I think there's this delicate sort of balance there. Honestly, I even thought of, content creators who've had anything, messy situations, extramarital style, gossip, you were here with there with who and what. And again, as long as this is the unfair part, right, of all of this, as long as they keep creating and don't stop, at some point they're going to be louder than the people who are commenting and seeking to drag them down. Cancel culture just hasn't worked the same way in our part of the world just yet. I even remember there's a brand which is an automobile hiring company that had some issues with perceptions of safety. I'm also gonna leave it there, but they were working with creators, and things got messy. So some creators pulled down their content, and a few left it up, and everybody descended on those creators who left it up. Now some creators say to themselves, "This is engagement. This is feeding the algorithm." Again, I'm telling you because I've been, with people who are like, I've switched off, uninstalled everything. I will come up for air in 72 hours. I'm with my inner circle, but the algorithms are going to be juiced up, and some people look at it that way, right? And I can't speak for anyone, I'm not going to say names, but some people look at it like that. Even right now on social issues, there's a trend that we identified that we call at Nendo activist talk. There are previously people who had done everything on TikTok and were in something that TikTokers call 200 view jail. That just means even if I dance, even if I lip sync, even if I do everything to the right sound, the right trend, I can't pass 200 views. Then I went to the office of the Auditor General and I did a little video for you guys on County X, Y, and Z, and I'm making it now. And I'm like, wait, this is the thing for me now. So I'm not here to say whether they are activists by choice or activists to build up an audience. I've even met teenagers just in some of our research who they build up accounts doing the most random content, then sell them for money, and that person just deletes everything and starts over on something completely different. Even caught someone the other day who is, I don't want to say it without, you can tell it's kind of scammy. And you know why? Because they're going to be deleting these and keeping the followers. And there's so much stuff that happens on the internet that's just almost bizarre. So even during the protest, some people genuinely said, this is for my nation, it's for my country, it's for the good of all time, but I want to be seen in a certain way. Because this might be my ticket out as a full-time content creator, and then I'll switch or pivot to something else. So I feel like there's so many rules that can be broken, can be rewritten, and just, it works for Andrew, it doesn't work for me. There's sort of megastars overseas who their beginnings were not very flattering or exciting, but they are global megastars now. And so if people know how to strategically use the publicity, this is the sad part of this, somebody can use a crisis to emerge as a voice that earns your trust, and then they co-opt that trust into a personal end or interest or means. And we'll only see it happening because it was probably happening even before there were cameras or clicks, and will continue to happen.